I want to show some of you and others in that key testimony from Donald Trump's first impeachment.
It was made clear that some action on Burisma Biden investigation was a precondition for an Oval Office visit.
President Trump wanted a public statement from President Zelensky committing to investigations of Burisma and the 2016 election.
Ambassador Sondland, he described conditions for the security assistance.
The White House meeting itself was being predicated on other issues, namely investigations and the questions about the election interference.
Was there a quid pro quo? The answer is yes.
Why was it important to you to provide that lawful testimony? I assume you stand by it. And what do you think of people like Mark Meadows and others who served alongside you who still are fighting lawful subpoenas?
Well, contrary to the other witnesses, some of whom I believe had a real agenda in wanting to testify, and I'm not going to opine on whether their agenda was righteous or not. They had an agenda. I actually had no agenda. I wanted to testify and get out of there. In fact, if they had said, you know, Ambassador Sondland, we changed our mind. We don't need you. We don't need your testimony. I would have been delighted. I really wanted.
This wasn't the close-up you were looking for.
No, absolutely not.
But Mark Meadows, as every bit an officer of the government as you are, go ahead.
Before we get to Mark Meadows, and I will answer that question, I testified because I was lawfully subpoenaed, and I believe I have to respect a lawful subpoena. My goal was to tell the truth. It was not to help President Trump, and it was not to hurt President Trump. It was simply to tell the truth.
And
if the results of the truth
hurt him.
Well, some things I said hurt him. Some things I said probably didn't hurt him or maybe even helped him. But at the end of the day, people can form their own judgment.
I appreciate that. You said you'd get to Meadows.
In the case of Mr. Meadows, I don't know the legality and the difference. I was not in what was considered to be apparently executive privilege conversations. So my lawyers, in whom I had a great deal of faith, said a subpoena comes, you have to go, unless you get a court order telling you you can't appear. If the president wants to go to court and prevent you, that's a different story. That never happened.
Bannon and Lindsey Graham don't have executive privilege with Donald
Exactly.
Trump.
And I'm not going to comment on whether they should or shouldn't testify. That's in their own conscience and their own heart.
I hope you'll comment on Mr. Giuliani, because he seemed to do a lot of things that made the United States less safe and your job harder, to say the least. Here's a little bit of what we heard from you about him then.
Mr. Giuliani's requests were a quid pro quo for arranging a White House visit for President Zelensky. Mr. Giuliani demanded that Ukraine make a public statement announcing the investigations of the 2016 election, DNC server, and Burisma. Mr. Giuliani was expressing the desires of the President of the United States, and we knew these investigations were important to the president.
You were a duly appointed ambassador doing work for the U.S. Mr. Giuliani was not. He is the only high-level Trump person in the center of both impeachments. He, in very obvious ways, fueled and contributed to the violence of the insurrection. Do you think Rudy Giuliani should ever go near Donald Trump or the government again?
Well, I can tell you, when we got back from Ukraine and we were very excited about Zelensky and the prospects for the future of the country, we wanted the president to share our excitement, and we wanted him to invite Zelensky to the Oval without preconditions. We were very disappointed when he said, I'm not interested in talking about that. If you want to talk about Ukraine, deal with Rudy. And we all looked at each other, Secretary Perry, Ambassador Volker, and myself. We said, what does Rudy have to do with this? But the president was insistent. So from that point on, we had to deal with Rudy, or Ukraine would have wound up in the dustbin.
Right, which is, in a way, an indictment of your boss. When your boss says, hey, standing up to Putin, dealing with this, what is now this land war, comes second to Rudy Giuliani being bananas and perhaps fomenting violent insurrections. I mean, he's in both of these things. Before we leave the impeachment terrain, there was another moment that was perhaps revealing. I'm reminded of the Tic Tacs and other things in your book, because it showed the sway of a kind of celebrified Kardashian concern inside the White House about getting out a musician and a celebrity artist that they were concerned about, which you said was kind of predominating over other issues. Here's a little bit from that.
On July 26th, shortly after our Kiev meetings, I spoke by phone with President Trump. I think we primarily discussed ASAP Rocky. We were talking primarily about ASAP Rocky. I think the president may have brought up, how to go with Zelensky, or is he going to do the investigations?
Ambassador Sondland further told the president that Sweden, quote, should have released him on your word, but that you can tell the Kardashians you tried.
ASAP Rocky was important on that day.
Why?
I have no idea.
And why was it important to tell the Kardashians that Trump tried? And did you feel at a certain point like things might have been a little upside down in U.S. policymaking?
Well, my job as the ambassador was to advance the president's agenda. And I had a very simple.
When you start the answer like that, it sounds bad.
No, it doesn't sound bad.
It does. It sounds like the president's agenda was what, Mr. Ambassador?
When I decide that I can't advance the president's agenda, and I'm speaking for every ambassador and every government official, my job is to resign. I did not feel that his policy at that moment in time of trying to get ASAP Rocky out, for whatever reason, merited a resignation on my part.
Right. So you say that's why you're doing your job.
Exactly.
You do touch on the insurrection in the book. You say, quote, you'll never forgive Trump for what happened on January 6th. He did massive damage. So he lost. You view him as having tried to illegally overthrow the results. Is that accurate?
Let me be clear about my feeling. All of these foibles that you've been describing, including the ASAP Rocky and including the Ukraine situation, I viewed as a package that I could live with until January 6th. January 6th was the red line for two reasons. Number one, as ambassador, I learned as we go around the world, the thing that autocracies, the people in an autocracy look at us, the people in fledgling democracies look at us, the way we turn over the keys when we change leadership. And we didn't do that. That was a critical thing. We get in the car with someone we hate, we ride up to the Capitol, we sit on the dais, we watch them give their inaugural address, and we hate their guts, but we still do it because that's the symbolism the world looks toward. Trump didn't do that. And for me, that was unforgivable. Then the insurrection, the riot, whatever you want to call it, he could have stopped it. He could have prevented it. He didn't do it. And for that reason, alone, I cannot support him for re-election.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber. Thanks for watching The Beat. I wanted to let you know I'm writing a foreword to the January 6th committee's full report, which is coming out soon from HarperCollins. You can go pre-order the book right now, and it'll come to you first when the report comes out in the fall or whenever the government releases it. Just search Melber Jan 6 on Amazon or your favorite independent book site and click pre-order. You'll be the first to get both the report and my new piece on the coup conspiracy. You can also go to melberbook.com and order it there.